Alhamdulillah, wa salat, wa salam ala wa rasulullah. Welcome to our series of the book, and this will be the last lecture of this series. And it's kind of bittersweet because I really enjoy teaching from this book. You know, the information that Sheikh Muhammad Saeed Atlee put in here about the Quran. You know, we started off learning that the Quran are the words of Allah. Why is that so important? It means that Allah was the one that revealed these words and spoke these words, you know, and no man could have ever produced a masterpiece such as the Quran. And that's obvious when you read it, you know. We started off discussing the reality of that. And then this book goes into how the Quran has different names, you know, and what those names are. And then it went into the different surahs, you know, the first thing it talked about was how the Quran proves to be the words of Allah by addressing things that man had no idea of back in those times, such as the earth, in regards to the earth, space, animals, insects, medicine, and that type of thing. And then Sheikh Atlee went into detail speaking about how the Quran addresses certain animals and certain things in this life and how they were created to service us. And then it went into detail of what we've been discussing these past few days about the names of Allah and what the virtues of certain surahs in the Quran are. And today will mark the finale or the last chapter of this great book. And it too speaks of some of the virtues of some of the chapters of the Quran. Let me put it up here. This will be the final of this series. Innovations. That's what it speaks about. Different innovations that people commit in regards to the Quran. And let's go over some of those innovations and see if you guys fall guilty of these innovations. One of the first innovations that people do in regards to the Quran is having a walima or a banquet party after finishing the Quran. How many of you notice Muslim schools and stuff that do this? Because you finished the Quran, we're going to have a dinner. You know, a banquet is lawful when a person consummates the marriage with his wife, because the Prophet did this. In fact, he said, make a walima even if it's with just one sheep. However, having a banquet or celebration for the occasion of finishing the Quran, this was never known of as being done by the Prophet or any of the companions. And if it had been a practice, it would have been reported to us just like the rest of the Islamic practices have been. For this reason, observing celebrations just for the sake of finishing the Quran is an innovation. Why? Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if anyone introduces into this matter of ours anything which does not belong to it, it is rejected by Allah. And what people have to understand is celebrations can fall in the category of actions of worship, depending on what you're celebrating and how you're performing that celebration. You know, you're saying that just because we've completed the Quran, we need to have a party. Okay, reading the Quran is an act of worship. So you're saying if we have a party, that's an act of worship too. So you have to give that dalil. Where did the Prophet do this? And of course, there is no such evidence. Also, remember the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever does an action that we have not commanded them to do, it will be rejected by Allah. So this is a big innovation, having a banquet or a party because a person finishes the Quran. Also, another common innovation is giving out food, drink, and candy to the children because they finished the Quran. You know, and again, this has never been reported by any of the companions or their successors that this is something that was done. Instead, this practice is another innovation which is introduced into the religion. And it takes away from this being an act of worship done for Allah into making it an act of worship done for candy or some other means instead of pleasing Allah. So again, we have to be careful of this type of innovation, guys. Remember, Allah didn't make any mistakes. He told us in the interpretation, the meaning, on this day have I perfected your religion for you and completed my favor upon you and have chosen you for you, your religion to be Islam. So this contradicts that, giving out food and candy to children just because they finished the Quran. Also, another innovation. I mean, first of all, look at this hadith. One of the companions said, Abdul Rahman ibn Amir as-Salami and Hujr ibn Hujr said, we came to Urbad ibn Saraya, who was amongst those whom Allah sent down the verse concerning them, okay, saying there is no blame on those who came to you, O Muhammad, to be provided with camels. Okay, well, Allah sent that verse down in regards to this brother and those who were with him. And they said, we greeted him and we told him, we have come to see you to give healing and obtain benefit from you. And the man said, one day the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam led us in prayer, then faced us, and he gave a long khutbah at which the eyes began to shed tears and the hearts became afraid. And a man stood up and said, O Messenger of Allah, it seems as if you are giving us a farewell speech. And the Prophet said, I enjoin you to fear Allah and to hear and obey, even if it be an Abyssinian slave. For those of you who live after me will live to see great disappointment. And when that happens, you must follow my sunnah and that of the rightly guided caliphs. Hold on to it and stick fast to it. Avoid novelties, because every novelty is an innovation. Every innovation is an error. So again, guys, the Prophet warned to beware of innovation in this religion. And also in another hadith, Ibn Malik said that whoever introduces something into the religion that is not part of it, it will be rejected. Remember, Allah says, on this day have I perfected your religion for you and completed my favor upon you and have chosen for you Islam as your religion. So therefore, that which was not part of the religion back then cannot be a part of religion today. So all this, we have to keep all this in mind, even when it comes to finishing the Quran. If it's not something that the Prophet told us to do, then we stay away from all this party and stuff. Also, another common innovation is kissing the Quran when you read it, after you finish reading it. Okay? During the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, okay, he ordered some companions to write down 2 to 10 verses at a time. So they had books back then. But if they didn't go around writing, and kissing the Quran after they finished reading it, why are people kissing on the Quran today? This is an act of bid'ah, of innovation. The Prophet didn't kiss the Quran, neither did his companions. The only thing that we kiss is the black stone when we're making Hajj. Okay, but other than that, we don't, and we don't kiss on the Quran because we finished reading it. and then we're going to put it up on a high shelf. This is a bid'ah. This is an innovation. So be wary of that and teach your children that, no kissing on the Quran. This is not from our way. Okay. Also, saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim when reading the English transliteration of the meaning. Okay, we only say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim when we're reading the Arabic of the Quran, not the English. And I hope this is clear because a lot of Muslims innovate with this. Okay. Any language other than Arabic. When you read a Quran in any language other than Arabic, you're no longer reading the Quran. You're reading the transliteration of the meaning in whatever language you're speaking. And there's no need to say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. However, when you do read the Quran and start from the middle of the surah, say Bismillah. Why? The Bismillah should only be said when you read or recite a surah from the beginning. It's innovation to say it in the middle of the sentence, guys. So if you're going to start reading, if the chapter begins with Bismillah, then you say Bismillah and then you start reading. Okay. Now, if you're reading a portion of the Quran, whether from the beginning or middle, that's when you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Why? Because Allah wants us to push the shaitan away before reciting the Quran. Also, another common innovation, which is what we get on you guys about here in the Zoom room, over-exaggerating and elongation of the vowels of the Quran. If you're going to be reading the Quran with tajweed, you have to follow the rules, guys. You can't turn a long vowel into a short one and vice versa, because you end up changing the meaning. And when you do hold a letter, you only hold it for 2 counts, 4 counts, or 6, not longer than that. Okay, anything beyond those numbers is exaggeration. And people do that just to excite the people, to get the people's emotions stirred. So you want to avoid that, stirring up people's emotions, okay? Let me put this back up so y'all can see it. Okay, so avoid over-exaggerating elongation. Anything beyond the 2 count, 4 count, or 6 just riles up emotions. And a lot of times when you over elongate, you're changing the meaning of the words, and you don't want to do that. Okay. Also, there are some people, when they read the Quran, they exaggerate their responses upon hearing it. They yell out in loud voices and they move their hands as if they're conducting an orchestra. When listening to the Quran being recited, the Prophet taught us to listen attentively. Allah tells us that when the jinn listened to the Quran recitation of the Prophet, they listened attentively. And that's what we should do, not move up and down and moving our hands like we are conducting an orchestra. Also, another common innovation is saying Sadaqallahu Azim. Oh, how many of us here people say that? They'll read the Quran at the end, they'll say Sadaqallahu Azim. This is innovation. Or they'll recite El-Fatiha. This is innovation. Okay, Allah does speak the truth, so we don't have to verbalize it. And the Prophet and his companions never said that after reciting, nor did they sit around reciting Fatiha after reciting either. Also, another common innovation is to use the Quran as a medical cure. Prescription medicine. We talk about this all the time. The Prophet Muhammad told us that the Quran is a cure for sicknesses of the heart, for diseases of the heart. It is not a cure for medical illnesses. If you need a cure for a medical illness, you go see a doctor. And this hadith that we have here, this is a hadith of a man that was sick. He had the people recited as ruqya, al-Fatiha as ruqya. Al-Fatiha is a supplication as well as a chapter of the Quran. And the Prophet said in this case for this person here that it was permissible for them to do, but not for us. If you're sick with diabetes, you go to the doctor and get your medicine checked, get your blood checked. You don't sit there and recite Al-Fatiha thinking Allah is going to cure you of diabetes. Okay. Also, another common innovation with the Quran is to begin all gatherings with recitation of the Quran, such as conferences, weddings, meetings, and the likes. This is a big problem. I remember when I was with Sheikh Atlee, we were at a conference and they started this conference off with a big supplication. And when they got through, Sheikh Atlee corrected them and told them this is a bid'ah. The Prophet didn't start all his gatherings off by reciting the Quran. And you hear people doing this all the time. Brother so-and-so will begin by reading some Quran to us. This is innovation. The way that the Prophet would begin a lecture is with that khutbah al-hajjah, the khutbah al-hajjah. He did not recite Quran. Also, another common innovation is hiring someone to recite the Quran over a deceased person after 40 days has passed or after a year has passed. You know, this is failure to accept the qadr of Allah. And reciting special supplications that is written at the end of most copies of the Quran upon completing the reading. This is also an innovation. Finally, to use verses of the Quran as an ornament or decoration. Some women, they take verses of the Quran and wear them as a necklace or a bracelet. You know, this is shirk. This is haram. Also hanging framed verses of the Quran on the walls of your homes to decorate. This is also innovation. And finally, women reciters competing in public with mixed audiences and in the presence of cameras and male judges. This is a big thing, to listen to a bunch of women recite the Quran with those crazy voices. And opening and closing a meeting with the Fatiha, that too is an innovation. Again, we don't need to recite the Fatiha. The Prophet taught us how to open a meeting and how to close it. Also, reciting the Fatiha after someone mentions the name of a deceased person. That is innovation too. Reciting the Quran in a group with everyone reciting the same, that too is innovation. Also, prescribing certain verses or surahs for a person as a means to gain success or to pass a quiz or to pass an exam. This is innovation. And also families bragging and boasting about the famous reciter that they have researched for a family member's janazah and that stuff, that boasting, all of that is innovation. So as I went over that list, I wonder how many innovations do we practice here? Okay. You want to think about that, guys. You know, show respect to Allah. Treat his book with dignity. All right. Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining and participating in this session.